Africa is the continent of legends, of snow on the equator, and great collections of animals and birds that can be seen nowhere else. It is the continent of mythical beasts, of great cats and giant serpents. All are the stuff of legend. But one of the most widespread tales in Africa concerns not these spectacular creatures, but a bird that's said to be a rainmaker, to have control over the coming of the rains and the flooding of rivers. Sometimes called the lightning bird, legend says it's the king of all the birds in Africa. To be king of Africa's birds, it must be something very special. Was he chosen for his size? If so, it would have to be the ostrich. Or for his beauty, in which case there are candidates of every color, shape, and size. Does he have a good act, like the long-tailed widow bird? Or a lot of supporters, like the quelea? Is he chosen because he is powerful? Or does he just have powerful allies, friends in high places? Or perhaps it's enough that he just looks like a king. Whatever he is, he must be impressive. So let's see. This is the hammerkop, the lightning bird, the legendary king of Africa's birds. As kings go, he's not much to look at, nor is his behavior especially regal. But the lightning bird is not king because of his size or strength or beauty. The legends say he is king because every other species of bird brings a contribution of sticks to help build the hammerkop nest. So though the monarch himself may look insignificant, his nest is indeed a palace fit for a king. Found only in Africa, the hammerkop is the single representative of a family that comes somewhere between the herons and the storks. Storks can be very handsome, like the saddlebill, or very ugly, like the marabou. The hammerkop, or hammer-headed stork, is merely drab. About a foot high, this guilty-looking bird, colored the dullest of brown, lives over most of Africa except for the deserts and forests. Their most typical habitat is along the narrow streams that wander through the savanna, such as this one in Tanzania. The king of the beasts and the king of the birds. For most of the year, the hammerkop leads an unremarkable life, spending most of its time like any other water bird, hunting for fish and frogs. Its life moves into legend at dawn one day early in the rainy season, when a pair begins to build their nest. Using plenty of mud to hold the sticks and grass in place, they start by building a flat platform. They build in a fork, anywhere from water level to 30 feet, and prefer to be over water if possible. Materials are no problem, as the riverbanks are strewn with twigs and driftwood from earlier floods. They work for only a couple of hours in the early morning, then go off fishing. So the nest grows slowly at first, especially at this stage, when with little to support them, many sticks fall down. By about day 6, there's a platform some 3 feet across, and now the birds work rapidly in relays to build it. The finished nest may weigh up to 200 pounds. A platform this size would be sufficient for most storks, even much larger species, but the lightning bird is just getting started. Nearby, a kind of flycatcher called a silver bird is starting to nest. For some reason, it collects the grass and fibers it needs from the hammerkop platform. Here, perhaps, is the source of the legend that other birds contribute to the hammerkop's nest. For the silver bird is only the first of many species to visit the nest. And without careful observation, they could be thought to be helping with the building. The silver bird is actually stealing tiny pieces with which it relines an old starling nest it's moved into. The hammerkops are curious and excited about another frequent visitor, this time a small bird of prey, the gray kestrel. Whenever a pair of hammerkops gets excited, they perform this strange ceremony called false mounting. Although derived from sexual behavior, its meaning is not specifically sexual. It's partly a way of strengthening the bond between the pair, but male and female will freely trade positions. And at times, up to a dozen birds will take turns hopping onto each other. More than anything else, it seems to be their way of letting off steam in tense or unusual situations. The kestrel is interested because she breeds in old hammerkop nests. She's only come to investigate, but a casual observer might think she was helping. And so again, the legend is reinforced. About a mile downstream, another pair of hammerkops is building and have already reached the next stage of construction. Once a strong platform is in place, they add firmly woven walls about a foot high and 2 feet thick. At all stages, mud and grass is used to fill the gaps and cement the whole structure together. Male and female appear identical to human eyes, and they both bring materials and build. But one, presumably the female, spends more time finding exactly the right place for every stick, and seems to have the last word in the matter. The finished walls are enormously strong. Only the most determined predator could push through them. And the roof that goes on next is even stronger. Why the lightning bird builds such a massive nest about 4 feet high and strong enough for a man to jump on is not known. They normally raise only 1 brood per nest and frequently don't breed in it at all, but use it only for sleeping. It's a huge investment of time and energy, but its advantages are anyone's guess. Close by is a colony of masked weavers. They too invest a lot of energy in building their woven nests, but take only 2 or 3 days compared to the hammercop's 2 or 3 months. When the nest is finished, the males display to try to attract a mate. The fresh green nest material will dry out within a couple of days. So if a female is not moved in by then, the nest will be abandoned, and often a male will pull it to pieces to make room for a new one. The practice of building a nest and not using it is not uncommon, but only the hammercop does it on such an epic scale. The airlift has been going on for 6 weeks now, and they haven't yet got to the roof. At this stage, they're often harassed by another visitor to the nest, the Egyptian goose. The geese do their excitement display, and the hammercops do theirs. The Egyptian goose lays in any old nest that's large enough. They prefer to nest over water, so hammercop nests are especially attractive and are in great demand by the geese. The lightning birds are more than a match for this goose, but again, the legend is given substance. When they build the walls, they leave a notch in one side where the entrance hole will be. It points away from the tree trunk, making entry by anything that cannot fly almost impossible. Heavy sticks are now laid across the top of the walls until there remains only a small hole, which is lined with finer material and reinforced with mud. Once the top is closed, a major airlift begins to pile up a rough thatch roof 2 to 3 feet deep. There are about 10,000 pieces to a big hammerkop nest, each involving a round trip of 100 yards or more. So just to build the nest, each bird flies some 300 miles, half of it carrying a heavy load. The benefits gained from this enormous expenditure of energy are hard to see. The nest is safer than most, but then again, its very size makes it a magnet to predators. There's less temperature fluctuation inside the nest, but that's a small advantage for so much work. The real reasons are a mystery. The nest is nearly finished. At last, the false mounting display becomes the real thing, and the hammerkop's mate. They never stop adding to the roof, but at this stage they bring a lot of purely decorative items, large feathers, hooves and horns, shed snake skins, bones, warthog tusks, and porcupine quills. All the sinister and mysterious articles you'd expect to find in a witch doctor's bag of magic charms. They're placed on the roof of the nest where they're easily seen by passers-by, and they often have that indispensable witch doctor's prop, a wildebeest tail fly whisk. It's no wonder people think this bird has supernatural powers. So after nearly 3 months, the work is finished. A ridiculously extravagant castle fit for the mad king of the birds. And within 100 yards upstream and down is last year's nest, and the year before, and perhaps the one before that. All still perfectly sound, still weatherproof and safe, each representing months of hard work, abandoned now to be used by others. In this part of Africa, these old nests are most often taken over by Egyptian geese. For them, the entrance hole is a very tight fit. More commonly, they lay in a shallow depression on top of the nest, thickly lined with down feathers from the female's breast. The gray kestrel seldom nests anywhere except in old hammerkop nests. This pair wants to move into the nest that already has a goose in the penthouse. But something inside the nest is bothering them. The inner chamber has already been occupied by a family of acacia rats. The geese take turns incubating the eggs and feeding in the shallows along the river. And there, one day, the female is caught and crushed to death by a 12-foot python. The snake will now swallow her at leisure. Her mate, after searching for her up and down river, guards the nest for a while and then abandons it to the creatures of the night. In Africa, an unguarded clutch of eggs is very unlikely to survive overnight. One of the most common small nocturnal predators is the genet, a tree-climbing relative of the mongoose. Her mouth is just big enough to tackle the goose eggs. The interior cavity of the nest below the genet has been stuffed full of thorny twigs by the family of acacia rats. They feed on acacia leaves and seeds and bring small thorn branches to build a dense, protective barricade around their grass nest. Placing it inside a hammerkop nest makes it even safer. This is what was keeping the kestrels out. The genet can smell the rats, but she's so full of eggs, she's not interested in tracking them down. She'll sleep it off and come back for more just before dawn. And when the cat's away, acacia rats live in small groups of an adult pair and their offspring. As well as old hammercop nests, they live in hollow trees or simply inside large piles of thorns in the treetops. The yolk stuck to the eggshells will be a great feast for them this night. Just 50 yards away, brooding on top of yet another old hammercop nest, is the rat's main predator, a Verrow's eagle owl. These owls don't hunt close to their nests, but the genet is still around, so the rats should be cautious. But on a warm night with a full tummy, what could be better than to curl up in an eggshell that seems to have been designed just for that purpose? The Verrow's eagle owl is Africa's largest owl, and on that continent, owls are held in great respect and even feared. When this ominous bird is seen spending its day ostensibly guarding the palace, the legend that the lightning bird is king is strengthened. In this year's nest, the female hammercop has been sitting on her eggs for 3 weeks, and now they're hatching. There's a lot of room inside the nest. It's about the size of the circle of your arms, but when the chicks grow up, they and the adults will just about fill it. The thick walls, floor, and roof keep the temperature very even inside, which could perhaps allow the young to be left for long periods while the adults go fishing. But they don't go off for very long, nor is there anything else in their breeding cycle that explains why they should need such a palatial nest. The gray kestrel's eggs are about to hatch too, and the male and female take turns incubating. The walls are plastered with droppings, evidence that this is an old nest in which a brood of hammercops was once raised. Baboons often raid birds' nests to eat eggs and young, but the kestrel is safe within the confines of the hammercop's nest. The nest provides a warm, dry place for the kestrel that's far safer and roomier than a hollow branch. And there are very few records of them nesting anywhere other than in a hammerkop's nest. Even their distribution in Africa is linked to the hammerkop and appears to depend on the availability of old nests. Given the lightning bird's enthusiastic building habits, there's certainly no shortage. Nesting inside is obviously safer than on top, and the Egyptian goose often has anxious moments as potential predators pass by. But these vervet monkeys are merely inquisitive and are very unlikely to try to raid the nest. The hammerkops never really stop building, never stop adding to the roof or plastering the walls. It's interesting at this stage to compare the different ways in which the hammerkop, kestrel, and goose treat their young. The hammerkop simply regurgitates a mess of fish and frogs and takes absolutely no further interest as the chicks help themselves. If one is sick or weak or smaller than the rest, it gets no special attention and will lose out to its stronger siblings. The kestrel is very different. She carefully feeds each chick individually, and even after they are all gorged, she continues to tempt them, in this case with the leg of an agama lizard. When she's satisfied they can take no more, the female will finish the prey herself. Although this hatchling is much smaller than his nestmates, he's sure to get the individual attention he'll need to catch up. The Egyptian goose does nothing except keep her goslings safe and warm. When they're 48 hours old, they will leap from the nest to the water, and thereafter the parents simply escort them to areas where green food is available and the young will find it themselves. This gosling, a bit of an explorer, leaves the nest prematurely. The mother will stay with the young on the nest. They're the ones behaving normally, and they get priority. The fallen gosling will have to pay the price of being adventurous. If he gets through the night, there's a slim chance that he might be found when the rest of the family jumps out of the nest the next day. By first light, they've already gone. Following closely in their mother's wake, they head downstream, the way the lost one went. Nature is not often so forgiving of a mistake. At dawn, a few days later, a young hammerkop is not so lucky. When the female leaves the nest, the two oldest chicks follow her to the entrance, and one tries to look out. Again, it's the explorer that has the accident, and a chastened chick hurries back to its less adventurous siblings. Unlike the gosling, the hammerkop cannot swim. High above the river, a 4-foot monitor lizard keeps watch. Unable to chew, he must swallow the chick whole. The gray kestrel sits at his lookout perch as a thunderstorm approaches. According to legend, the hammerkop is a bringer of rain and has control over the flooding of the rivers. In some parts of Africa, a witch doctor will suspend a live hammerkop at the height at which he wants the floodwaters to stop. believing that the bird will halt the rising waters to avoid drowning. A clever man would know just where to hang the bird, so that in all except very wet years, the floods would stop short of the lightning bird, encouraging the belief that both bird and witch doctor have magical powers. A crocodile moves close to the bottom of a waterfall. He knows that when the river floods, the fish will try to move upstream. They will accumulate at the bottom of the falls, and he will be ready for them. On a small side stream, a hammerkop uses a similar technique where fish move upstream through shallow rapids. The chicks are 3 weeks old now, and the walls are getting that plastered look. They're growing fast and are very inquisitive, and by 7 weeks already seem eager to start building.
But in Africa, you don't count your chicks until they've left the nest. The python is on the move again, and a long snake is one of the few creatures that can get into a hammerkop's nest. But he's just a day too late. He may use the nest for several days, as pythons often do, as a warm, dry sleeping place. And he'll cause some distress to the hammerkops who'd like to sleep in the nest. But once they know he's in there, he's no longer a threat. The young hammerkops practice their flying. But more than that, they endlessly polish the skills they'll need for fishing. The speed and coordination of beak and eye that will keep them alive once the adults stop feeding them. The young kestrels have also left the nest, and they too work on their hunting skills. Their emphasis is on the feet, striking and grasping excitedly at the twigs they use as dummy prey. Like the hammerkops, they too will soon be on their own. There is still one nest along the river with a family in it. The Egyptian goose that lost his mate to the python found another and made a late start. And this morning, the goslings are ready to leave. And so, with much help from the lightning bird, another season on the river comes to a successful close. But why do the hammerkops build these ridiculous nests? Why do they fly hundreds of miles and carry enormous loads to build structures that are far too large to make any sense in terms of survival value? And why do they so often move on without even using them? Scientists say there must be some benefit gained from all that outpouring of energy, but they cannot say just what. Others say that the lightning bird's nest is a flamboyant gesture, a defiant challenge that overturns all our laws and theories about natural selection. And what of the decorations? That ragbag of witch doctors' charms that are added to the roof where everyone can see and fear them. And what of those strange false mounting displays? Whether or not he is king, the hammerkop is certainly the Conrad Hilton of birds, the creator of a chain of magnificent buildings that provide homes and hospitality for a host of creatures. Mammals, reptiles, and birds. The legends say the hammerkop is the king of Africa's birds. And until science unravels some of the mysteries of the lightning bird, who are we to say he is not?